welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Today we will be discussing enhancing collaboration for contingent workforce excellence. I'm Daniel Schmitt, our Senior Product Specialist here at Flentis, and I will be our moderator for this discussion today. So our panel today includes Eric Koppin and Laura Moritz from Flentis, and of course our guests today are Denise Stalker and Dawnette Cooke from TalentProcure. So Eric, would you mind going ahead and just giving us a quick introduction of yourself, and then we can move on to the other panelists from there?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Daniel. Eric Koppin here. I lead global sales here at Flentis. Been in the contingent workforce solutions space for, well, this year marks 25 years. It's gone by really, really quick, but have had the opportunity to work both on the MSP and technology side, and really enjoy these platforms like this where we get to have open dialogue about what we're seeing out there that's working, and maybe some up and coming challenges that we haven't noticed in the past. So thank you.
Awesome. Right. Thanks, Eric. Laura, let's move on to you.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Moritz, Vice President of Product Development and Implementation for Flentis. So been in the industry my whole career, started as a recruiter actually, then moved into program management space, and then implementation, and finally found myself on the technology side. Been with Flentis, gosh, 2.5, almost 3 years now. So it's been a fun ride, and one of my favorite parts of it has been getting to work with Denise and Dawnette and building our partnership out with them. So Denise, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everyone. Thanks for spending some time with us today. I'm Denise Stalker, the SVP of our Managed Service Division, TalentProcure. I've been with TalentProcure for about 1.5 years, and prior to that for about 12 years with another large MSP firm in the industry. Just love what we do here, love getting to work with great tech partners like Laura and her entire team. So looking forward to our conversation today. Dawnette?
Great, that leads to me. So hello, so glad to be part of this panel. My name is Dawnette Cooke. I lead up the business strategy and business development at TalentProcure, so I work alongside Denise. Like most of our journeys, I've been in the space for a long time, and a little bit even longer than Eric. So I've worked both for other large MSP companies as well as worked for a VMS, always really in solution architecture, implementing, design, developing solutions. So I love to partner with partners and also with our clients on solutions.
All right, that's great. Thank you, everyone, for the introductions. So today, as we discussed enhancing collaboration for contingent workforce excellence, we are going to cover the what and why of MSP and VMS relationships, partnership in action, overcoming common implementation challenges, and then some real-world success stories at the end. You may also have some questions throughout the discussion, so I do want to call out that we will be doing a Q&A at the end of the session. So please feel free to submit all of your questions throughout this discussion so we can answer them at the end. So I want to kick off our conversation by discussing the what and why of MSP and VMS relationships. And I think a good place to begin that discussion would be with market evolution and client needs. So Eric, let's start on your end. How have you seen the needs evolve in the MSP and VMS space for both new and seasoned buyers?
Well, it's been an interesting last 5 years, I think, overall. I mean, especially with just how the marketplace is segmented a little bit more finite. You're seeing fewer jack of all trades organizations, and you're seeing buyers really investing in solutions that are mindful of specific niches within contingent workforce management. I think technology is driving a lot of new innovation, which is really exciting. So, the role of VMS, for example, in the past was, this is everything you need is right here, right? And, we're going to push all of the spend and requirements, and anything that has anything to do with contingent workforce is going through the VMS, and the VMS will take care of it. Well, that's not really the same anymore. The VMS is still, the system of record, and is still kind of the mothership, but now you're seeing all these wonderful technologies and platforms and service solutions that are really specific to certain areas, like direct sourcing, independent contractors, SOW, it goes on and on and on. Even EOR has really, really evolved into a more technology-driven solution than in the past. So I see clients becoming more savvy. I see MSPs becoming more savvy, and I see our space expanding into more than just typical contract labor. I see expanding into more services procurement, at least at some level, and really becoming more and more finite in the solution it provides. And then with that in mind, you're also seeing these new companies popping up of people we've known in the industry, right, for years and years. And what's interesting is, these have all been people been working that we know that have been working for large name brand organizations that, you say the name, everybody knows who they are, but now these new companies are popping up, and it's people that we know and respect that now have their perspectives on this space, and that relationship is continuing to evolve. So we're now seeing new companies with newer ideas, and it's all based on actual science, folks that have actually been there, done that, and realized some things work, some things don't. And we know what's great about small companies, they're very nimble, right? So there's always going to be disruption, but we're seeing more and more, and it's being more technology driven in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eric, for that. I think you brought up a lot of good points, especially on how with the new and recent technology innovation, it can certainly drive new evolutions for partnerships. So Dawnette, I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on exploring alternatives to traditional models, focusing on dynamic and adaptable approaches for client needs through our MSP and VMS partnerships?
Yeah, I think so much of thanks, Daniel. I think so much of what Eric said, we could have scripted this, but I wouldn't even have to speak, because it is, the trends. And that's the beauty of, having the experience and being in this and having forums like this. I think really, again, what we're seeing is there's still a lot of Gen 1 programs or new program management coming in. And there's also those mature programs, but regardless of, so there's that kind of dual tracks when we're looking at implementing MSPs. But I do think, just because inherently this has been here, MSP-VMSs for 20 years, folks have become more savvy, and they're just more educated buyers, even if they're, net new to a program. So they're looking, I think, for MSPs, and what we're bringing to the table, and some of these companies that, that Eric is chatting about too, is really looking for a strategic consultative partner. When we talk about technology, it is beyond, the VMS, which is always going to be our source of record. And there needs to be, a fool with a tool is still a fool, or whatever the case is, right? There's still going to be somebody that needs to run that. But things like AI and, business-driven analytics, it's no longer optional, right? It's here and it's now, and it has to be incorporated. So I think clients are expecting from us, what they should, that we are evolving with the way that the world is going to work. So there's all new kinds of HR hiring trends, skills-based approach. What does that look like? How do we help our supplier partners? How do we help our clients to adapt that in just simple things like job descriptions? Compliance is always going to be table stakes, but when you're looking at this new technology we have in some of those areas, risk, it looks totally different. So we thought GDPR was something. Now we have to look about it, and it is something, but all the way across the board, especially with AI technologies and all the examples that we're seeing. And to Eric's point, like, flexibility and scalability is an expectation. And I think we all have known that, but I don't know that there's always been the focus of looking at like what a mid-spend program is and a mid-market program is, and then how you really do take what has been very traditional and modernize it. And that scalability and nimble. And it's not just like, can you scale as my program goes, but what are you going to be at the end of that from a delivery model? Like, will you, if I don't have X amount of headcount, is everything going to go offshore, right? So there's all these considerations around technology, HR trends, compliance and risk management that we're doing. And I do think what Eric pointed out as well is that there has to be some specialties. We certainly, I think for the both of us, support markets that you would, expect, or verticals, professional services and financial services, consumer goods and services. But when you think about like healthcare and life sciences and even consumer goods and services, there's a big population that makes up an MSP and VMS programs. And a lot of those are always an afterthought. So I think clients are starting to bring that forward. Like this is the biggest part of our spend, or at least headcount. So how are we really bringing that up and modernizing and into what is like the way that people are working now? How is that, Deanna? Did I answer it? Can you go off from there?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, Dawnette, I think that was a lot of good points you made, especially how you mentioned just overall needing a strategic and consultative partner is so important. And it brings me to my next point of joint value proposition. So Erica, wanted to pick on you again and just get your thoughts on how an MSP and VMS partnership may offer a unique combination of services to a client.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the oldest story in our book, right? In solutions, you've got the service and you've got the technology. But I think now too, as I mentioned earlier, with all these different platforms and services and savvier buyers, we have to be better listeners, right? And it's not just table stakes anymore because there's more concerns. Clients are hungrier by industry with different reasons. Healthcare, you've got this continued fight regarding supply and cost. I mean, it's really just become mission critical. And in commercial, there's a number of things. How can I get more access to talent? Is it direct sourcing? Do you have pre-integrations with another platform that can actually do this? And who's your curator? It's not just, hey, I need direct sourcing. Now people realize I need technology and I need service. And does that include EOR? So, there's so many other conversations that need to be had. So the MSP is going to always continue to drive that service, right? Drive that evolution and understand what the client requirements are and what the next step in the program evolution is. And the technology has to be adaptable, right? So one thing we're hearing a lot in the marketplace is, why is it taking so long to get instances stood up? Is it the MSP? Is it the VMS? I mean, there's a multitude of reasons, but that strive for, better, faster, cheaper, it's never ending. So, the technology now has to be much more agile. It has to have much more options, and the service provider has to be more savvy and has to be on top of the industry because it's just changing so much more rapidly. So the partnership itself has to be, I think, stronger. MSPs have to be more savvy around the implementation of their technology platform partners, i.e. VMS. And the VMS has to actually be really transparent around their roadmap and capabilities, because clients know what they want. And it's not just, hey, I'm going to get this stood up and I'm going to wait for you to catch up. There's no time for that. So, I think the MSP has to be more educated. I think they have to be more active. I think they have to be more open to new solutions that are in the marketplace. And the VMS, I mean, it's evolve or die, right? So do you have those integrations in place? Do you have open API? Do you have an understanding of requirements in back office systems and different supplier functionality in their back office systems, for ease of utilization? So there's a multitude of questions and concerns and interests that span both sides. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is, do you guys work well together? Do you understand the capabilities of both? And can you lead the client to the promised land, when it's all said and done?
And I want to just add on, because I think something that you said, Eric, is super important, of really listening to the client. And I think that's something that was kind of forgotten for so long. And you saw programs trying to mold the client to fit into what their processes were. And I want to kind of just call out Denise and her team and the way that we worked with them in really taking the time to understand the client and their processes. And there are always going to be situations where the client turns to us as experts and says, what's best practice here? But we really need to do a good job when we're in that situation of listening to the client and letting them lead, of how is this process followed in other parts of your organization? How can we make this as seamless a transition as possible for you? So I think that's a super important piece that, Denise, you and your team do exceptionally well.
Thank you. And I second that, Laura. I think that everything is moving faster. You're right, Eric. People have stronger demands than they did before. But sometimes they don't know what they don't know, which is a little dangerous. And it gives us an opportunity to lead them in the right way, but it does involve asking the right questions, understanding what their pain points are, and then figuring out how do we make this a better experience for the end user. And Laura and her team is stellar at listening to those requests and then figuring out, okay, what's the best technology solution? How do we make this work? And how is it going to benefit the platform overall, not just this client? So I appreciate that about Flentis.
Awesome.
I think from a partnership perspective, and I think we're going to go into those real life examples soon, right, Daniel? But I think,
Yep.
What Eric and everybody said from a partner perspective is that I think the reason why we, obviously both of us work with other preferred suppliers, right? We're, not exclusive just because of the nature of the business, but when you really have somebody that has the same go-to-market strategy and the same passion around, innovation and the niches that we've been talking about, I think that's what happened. And then that true collaboration is part of what you're seeing. And that just benefits the client hand over, right? Because it's not ever separate, right? That we cannot really, we coexist. It's not either or. Somebody has to be kind of like Eric said at the helm of, right, with the clients. It should be a co-managed, all of us there at the table at the same time. And I was just recently getting ready for a ProcureCon panel, and there were buyers as expected and other VMSs and MSPs, and the question came up, well, who do you think should go first when a client's making a decision, first gen, or if they're just kind of scrapping and doing a redo? And it was interesting to hear other perspectives. Most people that worked for the VMS said the VMS. Most people that worked for the MSP clearly said that the client, had an opinion. And I think when it can be both at the same time is the right way to go in. And I think we're seeing a little bit more of that in our, RFPs or clients when we're talking to them, or just general information in the market. And it just makes so much more sense, because we can listen to them. We can bring, best practices. We, as the smaller organizations that are still mighty, have that thing, like, we don't have to be implementation in a box. We don't have to be program in a box. We can do all those things, like you said, Laura. And that's especially important for these mid-spend, mid-market programs, or again, some of those other verticals who felt like they had to go specifically with a certain provider because they were specialty in that. And so I think, that's kind of the value of our partnership, is just this great collaboration. We have a good cultural alignment, which always makes sense, but it's easy to have a good cultural alignment when really your end goal, both of our end goals, are to give the best experience and continue to grow programs and bring in innovation and, all of those things that we do together. So, and being one of the few diversity suppliers, that a diverse MSP supplier and a diverse, VMS supplier, that's also good, because we have our communities that we can bring in and work with too, and that really helps with the goals. So just all around, again, it's fun and it's a pleasure to work with this team, but it's a good tool. It's good people. I hope they feel the same about us. I think we'll hear about that, but it just is, plus for the client all the way around. And, that's the end game.
Yeah, I definitely think those are some fantastic points, Dawnette, and definitely vital for maintaining that successful partnership. And you really mentioned how we have to listen to the client and adhere to kind of some of those specific requests, and then be kind of experts on how to move forward with some of those requests. So to get a little bit more detailed here on the partnership and action subject, Denise, what are some of your thoughts on how MSP and VMS collaboration can streamline things like specifically the recruitment, onboarding, and just overall management of the contingent worker process?
I think that one of the most important things that we've done in our partnership that has really been a huge benefit to the client in helping to streamline some processes for them and really create best-in-class solutions is partnering from the beginning. So having our VMS partners involved in all of our discovery meetings, really talking to the client, understanding, like Laura mentioned earlier, what are their processes today? What are the pain points in those processes? How do we make this easier for a manager? Today, if they're making 5 clicks, how do we get them to make 3? If they're approving in one system, they shouldn't have to approve in another. So really being thoughtful about what their current process is and trying to always improve that and make it better. I've really appreciated partnering with the Flentis team because you guys have done a really great job of listening and observing. And then one other thing that we've done kind of behind the scenes without the client is we've met every single week. Any project we work on, we have a meeting once a week to talk about everything that we've learned during that week with the client. And it gives us a chance to properly solution before blurting out to the client in a discovery session what we think might work, because we might all have different ideas. So it really is true collaboration, like Dawnette mentioned. But it's really about listening and asking the right questions.
And I think to kind of add on to that, because one of my favorite things about our partnership is those weekly meetings and the fact that we are included in those discovery calls, because it's so much easier just to hear the information directly rather than having to play this game of telephone of saying, oh, this is what the client said. And you're listening with different ears from a program management perspective than you are from a technology perspective. And so it's really helpful for us. And I think something, just to brag on my team a little bit, is their ability, with their background being in MSP program management, their ability to kind of translate the need from MSP program and communicate with our more technical team to actually build out those needs. I think that's something that has really served us well in this space, and has made that implementation and discovery process a little bit smoother for us.
I would agree. It's like you speak our language without us having to translate, because most of the time client service people are not technical people.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Awesome. So I think those were all great points. And in addition to streamlining those processes, it's definitely also important to talk about key benefits of leveraging partnerships for improved efficiency, cost savings, and compliance. So Eric, from your end, how would you leverage those things in terms of improved efficiency, cost savings, and compliance? And then, of course, Dawnette, feel free to jump in here and provide your insight as well.
Well, it goes back to my narrative from earlier. There's things that we do well as organizations, but we're not experts, right? And we have to understand that delineation of being good at something or being really, really awesome at it. And I think we have to either decide as organizations to, build, borrow, or partner. I think partnerships are wonderful in that regard because, we have to, as organizations, I think we're more effective when we stay in our lanes and we understand our biggest challenges, but our greatest opportunities. So, and I'll use an example with just TalentProcure here. So, we can go into certain client opportunities and, be successful, but understanding the client challenges, like, are they too lean, or do they not really have the intellectual capital around our space to really provide that kind of program leadership into the future? We have to identify that really quickly as a technology organization, because, as Dawnette led to earlier, right? The fool behind the tool, the platform is only good as the data that goes into it, right? If the data is bad or if the process is not good, then all you're going to have is faster bad data or faster bad processes. So there has to be some leading, right? And there has to be some understanding of where potential pitfalls might be or up and coming challenges, whether they're procedural or regulatory or market based challenges. So long story short, it's going to be incumbent upon organizations like us to very quickly, and I'm saying Flentis, very quickly say, wait a second, I think what you guys are doing are right, but I think we need help in making this even better than you expect it to be, because here's why, blank, blank, blank. And so we bring in the correct partner. So we would grab TalentProcure potentially and say, hey, guys, you've got a significant contingent workforce, and a good chunk of it is industrial, and you don't seem to have an EOR partner, we can knock a lot of these things out because this is what they do. And I'm not just saying industrial, but they can understand what of course you guys are great at industrial, but what I'm saying, it's not just industrial. TalentProcure can come in, or another partner can come in and right the ship. But that's what we love about the relationship with TalentProcure, is because we know what their strengths are and they excel at certain areas. And when we see those, we identify those in a client, we can very quickly pivot and take that relationship up to the next level. I think that's really, really important in being in the solution side of our industries, is to delineate what we're good at, what we're not good at, and know who the good partners are that aren't just good because people say they're good, but that they're trustworthy and their track record of success.
Yeah, I so agreed. Yeah, so agreed, Eric. And I think again, likability is a huge thing, but also competency is that trumps likability, right? So I think having that mutual respect and areas of expertise, and like we said, when you talked about earlier about, some of us coming in as, or most of us on the call as, industry veterans, and bringing along a lot of that, experience that we've had. And we've had that experience at multiple providers. We've had that experience with hundreds of different clients, right? And so that's what we get to bring to our clients that are, considering even, at the beginning, if they're a new program or self-managing, that kind of broad area of expertise. And I think to address some of the issues, like how do we do, I think, Daniel, the question was like around compliance, around all the things that are those kind of key tenets of what clients are looking for, compliance, the right technology, which is incorporating things like AI and recruiting and talent, and how we optimize and manage supply base, and all those things that we can come together, because there's processes that can be built and that data can be spun around, because everything has to be data driven when we're looking at that. And also the ability to kind of a la carte or pick and choose. So like to Eric's point, if there is an identification that, we're heavily focused on staff aug, but then you see that there's the pain points are really and more spend even, and those things are EOR, or certainly they're looking for, some diversity in EOR, or they don't have AOR compliance. When you look at what an MSP does, you're looking for a partner in a VMS that can support all those different tenets. Like Eric said early on, 5 years has been a difference in it's been a lot happening rapidly in our industry because of, post-pandemic, right? So the whole work from home and the way workers engaging and the rise of freelancers. And so those MSP programs should be, and that's what's great about having a tool, is that visibility, but it doesn't always have to be the same track. They can be those programs within programs, but there are SOW program, management that we need to include. And so I think that's how we address a lot of that client's needs. We don't, for a new program or a Gen 1 program, have to boil the ocean and take everything. There should be phases and maturation models and all of those things, except that maybe the best place isn't always even to start at staff aug, right? Maybe the best place is to start at AOR and SOW. So I think just having that insight, listening, and being able to put those options forward versus, again, kind of the standard checklist of how things, have been only traditionally done. Because the way that people are working now is wildly different, and our clients know that. And it's our job to help, elevate that. And, there's no difference between what's going on in the world of work and contingent workforce. The trends are the same.
And I want to add on to that, because I think that's super important when we talk about how rapidly everything is changing. And we rely so much on our partners to say, like, these are the changes that are happening. There needs to be change in technology as well to support that. And sure, we can know that more people are working from home now, but that doesn't necessarily mean we know how that changes the structure of a program. And so are there reporting requirements that go along with that? Are there credentialing requirements that go along with that? We really lean on our partners when it comes to product development and that rapid change to say, hey, we need this in the technology. And Daniel can attest to it. That is where a lot of our product development comes from, is those conversations with our partners that are so important.
Right. And when we think of trends, even like upskilling, right? And even just like skills-based and non-degree requirements and those things, you think, okay, that is just what's happening. But there has to be a way in in the tool and the way that the teams that are being put together communicate that, because now it's different. It's not just like looking at this degree or looking at this piece. It's like based upon skills, and then how do we validate those, and where do they exist in the tool, and then how is the MSP doing that? So that's all of the collaboration I think you're working on. And Denise, I'm sorry, go ahead, because
No.
I'm at a different track. Yeah.
No, totally fine. One thing I did just want to address, because Daniel brought it up, and I think that it is a hot button for everyone, and that's cost savings. Everybody wants to know, how is this going to save us money, right? The first thing I will say is that if we can find a way to save clients time by streamlining processes, that saves them money automatically. The other thing is that when you do have all of your external spend in a VMS tool, it creates visibility. Once you have visibility, then you can look at where can we cut some of the spend. Sometimes it's very obvious in SOW, right? Sometimes it's, wow, we had an SOW with 6 deliverables. None of them were met on time, and we paid more than we agreed to. But we didn't know it because it wasn't in a tool before. So some of them are very obvious, but other things are really looking at those processes for a client to say, how can we take some of the onus off of your current full-time staff? So it could be part of the consolidated invoicing that we do every week. They're getting one invoice now instead of 50 invoices from 50 different suppliers that they then have to turn around and reconcile and pay. We handle all of that for them. So when I didn't want to ignore the question about cost savings, Daniel, but I think that it's a very deep conversation with each client, but not something to be ignored or skipped over.
Definitely, yeah. And I think
Go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead,
Sorry. I'm like, it's never just one conversation, right? So
Right.
It's at the beginning, it's at the middle, it's the whole evolution, it's every quarterly business review or review. So you're right. It's like tearing that up. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one place to really dive in on those conversations and truly learn about the client and be on the same page, like you all discussed, between the client, the MSP, and the VMSs during that implementation phase, that very important phase. So I think this is a good opportunity to jump into kind of overcoming some of those common implementation challenges. So with that being said, obviously, Laura, you having many years of experience within implementation, what are some common challenges that you faced when implementing with a client during an MSP and VMS partnership?
Yeah, and I mean, the complex answer is that every implementation is different. There's never going to be 2 implementations that are alike. And the most important thing in implementation is setting expectations. And making sure that the scope of the assignment, the right stakeholders are there, and just that the outline and plan for the implementation is done from the beginning. Things are always going to change when we're doing an implementation. There's always going to be things during the discovery phase that likely the client didn't even know themselves. And that's the point of it, to kind of dig into that and then adjust the implementation plan, timeline, deliverables from there. So I think the biggest thing is the fluidity and being agile in that implementation process, just to make sure that everyone is kept on the same page. And Denise mentioned earlier that we meet not just with the client weekly, but we meet with partners weekly throughout implementation as well, just as a check-in to say, hey, this is what we learned this week. What does that mean for the rest of our implementation plan? And how do we avoid problems that may come up because of it? How do we get ahead of things that are going on that we may know about? And what do we not know about yet that could be a potential problem or hurdle to jump over? And the sooner that we can identify all of that, the smoother the communication will be and the smoother the implementation will be. So I kind of danced around that a little bit, but I think it's so hard to say what problems are going to come up in an implementation because it depends on the workflows and the approval processes and the integrations that come up, and everything that is a part of an implementation is a potential hurdle. And so it's really just understanding the client needs and expectations going into it.
Absolutely. And Denise, I wanted to check in with you because I'm sure you've dealt with in the past many clients, and you're bound to run into these common implementation challenges that Laura addressed. And she addressed some ways to improve on those and how we can address these challenges. But I want to hear from you as well on how you would address some of these implementation challenges that Laura brought up.
Yeah, I think that there's one aspect that I think of outside of technology specific that end up weighing in on the technology questions that come up. And that is all of the different stakeholders that are involved in actually standing up a program. No matter who the client is, no matter what the implementation team looks like, someone is always not represented. And sometimes it's somebody from finance didn't get to weigh in on something, or someone from legal didn't get to weigh in on something, or technology was brought in too late, meaning the client's IT team was brought in too late. So what I've learned over the last, 10 to 15 years is make sure that you have all the stakeholders that you need at the beginning and you set the expectation. And Laura really did an amazing job at a very recent implementation that we did with Ask Bio of laying out exactly what the time requirement was going to be from each of those stakeholders. Because when people know up front and they agree to it, it's very hard for them to become hypocritical halfway through and say, "Oh, I didn't agree to that," or "Oh, this is taking too long." So really laying out what their expectation is of that client team, I think has been a really huge help for us. And it allows you to overcome some of those other challenges a little quicker. Like when there is a challenge around technology or an integration with a client technology, their IT team's on the hook because they agreed to be, and we identified them up front. So I think that from my perspective, that's a really key piece to always keep in mind whenever you're implementing.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. And you brought up, IT teams and integrations and things like that. And I think that's a good kind of transition into also overcoming some of these challenges post go live, because obviously, as we know, there's challenges during implementation, but from a program management perspective, there's always things to manage for the years to come and the life cycle of the program. So Laura, do you have any kind of thoughts on how to address some of the challenges that we've discussed already, or even if you have new challenges you thought of for post go live and program management?
Yeah, I think something to keep in mind that's super important is that go live is not an endpoint. It's not, okay, we're done, go live, we all step away. And it's not intended to be that either. I think we would all be kidding ourselves if we thought we could stand up a program and then just let it run itself forever and ever. The intention behind it is to improve and learn more about the client as you have the program stood up. And that's from a program management perspective as well as from a technology perspective. We're constantly learning and constantly in touch post go live, not just during the implementation process. And I think, sorry, Denise's dog distracted me. I was like, "Oh, cute dog in the window." No, I think that's super important when it comes to post go live. Is again just kind of setting those expectations of like, hey, there are going to be things that come up. There's going to be more things that we're going to learn about the program, and setting those quarterly initiatives to say, okay, we've got a quarter's worth of data now. Let's start talking about reporting. What kind of things are you looking to see in the system over the past quarter, and start thinking about what you have access to over the next year or years. And I think there's a lot of areas that can be improved with that post go live knowledge that are kind of sometimes left untouched. And it's an area that I think needs to be addressed, and we can talk more about what that looks like to kind of keep those programs at the forefront and not just say, hey, we're focused on all these new implementations, but that we're giving that same attention and service to those clients that are post go live as well.
Absolutely. And then Denise, from an MSP perspective, do you have anything to add to what Laura brought up in terms of post go live issues and program management for clients and the partnerships and how we work through those between MSP and VMS?
Oh, Daniel, we never have post go live issues. I don't know what you mean.
Oh no, yep. Never. Never heard that before.
Yeah, I think it's evolution, right? It's always trying to evolve the program. So it may not be, the week after you go live or even the month after you go live, but I think there's always a way to look to better the program. I'll tell you, in the Ask Bio implementation that I mentioned earlier, we actually found post go live a duplicative process. We actually found it earlier this week. So now it's time to have that conversation with the client to say, okay, well, we fixed this problem that you were having before, but you're still having the same problem because you haven't changed your internal processes. So I think it's always identifying a way to be better and to be more agile and to make the manager's life easier, because they really are typically the ones using the tool the most. But a lot of it is also through reporting. It's showing analytics. It's making sure that you're bringing all of that information to your client regularly so that they can make better business decisions. And as they grow and evolve as a company, we want to grow and evolve with them. And I always make a joke, but it's not proven to be a joke yet. Laura and team never say no. Whenever we bring them a business problem, they're like, yeah, we can fix that. And it's really refreshing to have a technology partner that has that attitude, because that has traditionally not been the case. With a lot of other tools, it has been write us a business justification, give us an enhancement request, and maybe in a year or two, we'll consider it. So it's just a refreshing take that all of you have just been really receptive to ideas and thoughts on how can we improve this for clients today and moving forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think it is something that's so important. And to kind of tie it back to earlier, Dawnette's point of the rapidly changing industry, is that applies mostly to current clients, right? Of course, we can do those things and then sell the product that has those things in the future. But it's the immediate need is those clients who are rapidly changing. And that is all part of the post-go live processes. Denise and her team and any partner that we work with, understanding what those client needs are and how their processes are changing and how that needs to be reflected in our program and our technology. So if there is a need, we want to be able to support that. And I think it's so important to make sure that our partners are not using workarounds. And I think that's so common coming from the MSP background that I have. That's what we were always told. There's this workaround. You can do it manually, doing it this way, or whatever it may be. And we don't want our partners to have to do that. We should not be a technology that gives an answer of there's this workaround that is a permanent solution.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Laura and Denise. Definitely appreciate all that insights on, implementation and post-go live challenges. So before we go to the last question here, I just want to put in a quick reminder to get any questions submitted, since we will be doing our QA in the next few minutes here. So today we've talked about things like, the what and why of MSP and VMS relationships, partnership and action, overcoming implementation challenges, and then you all have shared some real world success stories too. So I just wanted to look at some takeaways from each of you from this conversation. So starting off with Laura, do you have any, key takeaways from this conversation that you wanted to call out or expand upon?
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway is just the alignment with our partners and making sure that we have that constant line of communication, that our technology is very synced up with the processes that you guys are putting in place to manage your program. I think that is the most important piece. And without that, we're not able to successfully deliver a program to our clients.
Absolutely. Let's move on to Eric. What are your key thoughts and takeaways from the conversation here today?
Well, I think there's a few things, and certainly one that is completely focused on our specific partnership with TalentProcure. So far we've had a really, really good experience working together. And I think what that highlights is when you have two teams that are both very passionate about the business, but are also great listeners to each other as well as the clients, and then bring, our own expertise to the table. It's a kind of It's an elixir that is very intoxicating. We want to work together, more and more. And, we know, because we've all seen it. We've all been there. We all work with different organizations. It's not always like that. And I think it's really just recognizing when to lead and when to ask for help or bring in another SME that's going to add value to the relationship or what's happening at that moment. I think there's some value in modesty, right? And although I think we both love our organizations and we both are very proud of what we do and what we've accomplished, in our tenure in this space, we know that there's just so much more to learn and so much more to be accomplished together. So I think when you have like-minded partners in that instance, I think, the future is very bright. So that's my 2 cents.
Well said. And speaking of our partners, let's hear from then Denise. What were some of your key takeaways from the conversation today?
I really think that much like what both Laura and Eric have already said, choosing the right partner is really critical. And we knew very early on in the partnership with Flentis that we were very like-minded. We had the same target market. The tool was really great for the majority of the clients that we were talking to. So I think that continuing that collaboration and growing together with your partners, and then not being afraid to enlist the help of third parties when you need to, right? One of the integrations that Laura's team is working on, I was able to reach out to somebody else that we're connected with at Coupa to have them jump in and assist. So I think it's just being smart in that selection and then fostering that growth together.
Awesome. Absolutely. And then last but not least, Dawnette, what about you? What are some key takeaways that you learned from this session?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot too, which is always a great day, right? But I do think when we were talking specifically about market trends and target markets and go-to-market strategies, that we do have very seasoned buyers and definitely educated buyers that are seeking both MSP and VMSs that will serve to them as strategic partners. And it does have to be an ecosystem. And we hear a lot of, like, even in there, how many buzzwords were there? But when we talk about really growing this ecosystem, it takes a village, all those type of things, that's what this is really about. So it's, mutual respect, alignment, plenty of voice of the customers. I hope to do many more of these webinars where we're bringing on our customers, right? And I know certainly we'll be having that. So, to continue to moving forward with the voice of the customer and always talent-centric, being talent-centric in mind as well. So the takeaways really are there are strengths in leveraging other people's strengths and other partner strengths. And it really is such a good experience, I think, for our clients or for clients looking to seek that if you can bring these two parts of your contingent workforce program together in tandem and parallel, it's pretty powerful. And it also makes for a much more streamlined overall process and experience. And to Eric's point too, like, it doesn't have to be, 120-day implementation cycle. It can be what you want it to be if that's it, but we certainly have the ability, and it won't be in a box. It'll be customized, but we can work to get where you need to do and tools implemented a little bit more quickly along with those processes.
Absolutely. I think those are all great key takeaways, and I'm sure the audience, everyone listening in today has gotten a lot of similar takeaways as well.
So, hey, Daniel, before we jump into Q&A, I do want to make a shameless plug. I know that both of our organizations are going to be at some upcoming conferences over the next 2 weeks, and I just want to shout out to everybody who's on, and thank you for joining us, who all is out there. I know we've got a large group. But next week is SIA's Executive Forum. I know that our friends at TalentProcure don't have a booth. We do. We're at 2:15, and I know some of the leadership from TalentProcure is going to be there. So if you do want to talk to those folks or us, come see us at 2:15 and be happy to broker a conversation with them. And then a week after that, we'll be in LA for ProcureCon. I know both organizations will be there as well. So you will find us in person if you're going to be out there. Just want to make sure that's out there.
Awesome. Yeah, those are going to be some great conferences. So we're nearing the end of our session. So let's jump into the Q&A so we can get some of the questions answered. All right, so the first question here, in the chicken and egg situation, which comes first, the MSP or VMS if we are starting new? So Laura, since you've had experience in both, what are your kind of thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I think, and it's funny, I can't remember if it was Denise or Dawnette earlier said that whoever is the one that is being represented is that they're going to say themselves. So every fiber of my being wants to say VMS right now, but I think the right answer is you have to kind of consider what your program is and where you're at. And I think Dawnette just made the point of the buyers out there right now are very educated. And so I think they know what their program needs, and is a technology going to be something that their organization is very, very into and needs to have that be kind of leading the conversation, or do they need some more management and help with maybe changing some of their processes up and some change management there. And then I think also if you have a buyer who's looking for a Gen 1 program and they've never implemented before, maybe having that guidance from an MSP partner to help select, hey, which tools are going to be the best for us could potentially be helpful as well. So I think it really does depend on kind of the size, scope, and maturity level of the program that we're looking at.
Absolutely. All right, let's see. Another question we have is, can we manage all aspects of our MSP relationship through the VMS, including contract management, communication, and performance reviews? So Denise, what are some of your thoughts on that question?
The short answer is yes, you can. Would we say that all of those things being in your VMS would make the most sense? Probably not. But yes, all of the things that you mentioned can be part and should be part of your MSP program. There are certain things that different clients want to keep separate or keep outside of the tools that they own. So there's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all answer to that question, because I do think that there are definitely clients where they do want everything all in one place. There are clients that are a little more risk averse and want things separate. There are clients that ask us to own the technology. So it really depends on the program, but can it be done? Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Let's see. All right. What level of support does your company offer for the VMS, including onboarding, training, and going through technical assistance? Laura, is this another question that you may have some thoughts on?
Yeah, I certainly can answer this, and then I may lean on Denise a little bit as well with the ongoing assistance too. I think we are, of course, going to offer full training of the technology and provide documentation, recorded training sessions, personal training sessions, things like that. When it comes to kind of the ongoing technical assistance, of course, our team will be involved in that technical support. But I think a really important piece of this is the MSP kind of does take over that support as that first layer. They're the ones that really understand and know the program. And so a lot of times what may appear to be a technical issue actually isn't, and just is an education or process issue, or just education of what the current processes are, whether it be a new hiring manager being onboarded, something like that. So Denise, I don't know if you wanted to add anything further on that support piece.
The only thing I would add, honestly, Laura, is that from the MSP side, it's really essential that we have someone who fully understands the technology, that understands the different configurations that are available, that understands how to do some of those things. And you guys have been really tremendous in supporting us there and getting us up to speed, so that the people that we have assigned to the different programs as that technical SME really do understand it. And I think probably 95% of the time don't have to come back to you for questions. So that's been great.
Yeah, another reason to have great partners, because it's really hard to have a program managed when the partner doesn't understand the technology.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, I think that was a great closing question here. I don't believe we have any more. So with that being said, if there are more questions and we didn't get to them all, we will be reaching out directly to you with answers. And as always, Oh, wait, there might be one more question actually here coming up. Okay, perfect. Let's see here. So the question is, how important is it that the client is fully aware of their IT infrastructure landscape and what that looks like before buying a VMS solution? What kind of challenges does it present when a client feels they want to integrate with a third-party system? Eric, do you have any thoughts on this question in terms of buying a VMS solution with these challenges?
Well, I mean, I think that's a very valid question, because if
Yeah.
you have, for example, Workday or Oracle, and you're pushing recs through a certain third-party system or an ATS, that you still want to be involved in the life cycle of recruitment for both your permanent and your contingent workforce, and you don't want to see redundancy, then we need to understand exactly what those systems are, what are the key fields that need to be integrated. And I'm sure that Laura is going to be able to speak to this much better than I am. But we need to understand what that landscape looks like, because, for example, our platform is open API, which I think is a great thing. I think it makes it way more flexible for clients. But still, we need to understand what that infrastructure looks like, because if your system doesn't have open API, then we need to figure something out and make sure that we have a well-defined strategy going into a new implementation. Laura, what are your add-ons on that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of part of the discovery phase of implementation bleeds a little bit into the sales cycle too. We have to kind of do some digging on what does their landscape look like. And sometimes it's clients don't know what to look for. And so you have to say, what are you using for this? What technology are you using? What is your process for this? And we can help them understand that. And then it becomes a conversation of, okay, we know what that landscape is. Now here's how we can solution that. And hopefully helps them make that decision to say, okay, this is someone who we can integrate with and it makes sense. And Denise made a great point earlier of us kind of leading the clients when it comes to that discovery and putting together a program to say, okay, we know you want to do your integrations this way. You want to have it going back and forth 30 times. But if we feed it this one time into the VMS and then feed it out this last time, it may streamline the process, things like that. So I think it's a consultative approach and making sure that we're working with them to understand what their landscape is and how we can solution what fits their needs.
Yeah, it could be a process improvement opportunity right there. Because I've certainly heard in my career, hey, can you integrate into Oracle or Workday? And it's like, okay, well, what do you need it for? Well, I just was told we need to integrate. Well, we need to go a little deeper than that. So yeah, that's a great question. But yeah, it's very important to understand what the IT infrastructure and the client expectation is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think that is all the time we have left for questions. If we didn't get to any of the outstanding questions, we'll be reaching out with direct answers for you. And always, please feel free to reach out to us with any follow-up questions. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who joined and was listening and watching with us, and thank you to the panelists as well.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Awesome. Enjoy the rest of your week, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.